AITA for refusing to let my stepson return home without punishment after he ruined my daughter's book collection. My biological daughter Susan likes to collect and read old children's books. She's become an incredible reader. She had problems with reading and learning before, and we were advised to encourage her to read, and ever since she started reading, her skills improved. She also reads to her 2-year-old sister every night. I have a stepson, Levy, who can be a hothead sometimes. We don't have a son-dad relationship, but I respect him and he respects me, though he can act quite mean and selfish towards me and his sisters. He'd throw away stuff that belongs to us over small arguments and teases Susan for spending a lot of time to read, calling her grandma. My wife and I discussed his behavior and had conversations and agreed on punishments, but Levy'd go to his dad's place whenever he causes troubles, then have his dad yell at me for wanting to discuss a suitable punishment. Then Levy comes home days later expecting me to let go of what he did every time. It's frustrating. I got a call at work from Susan saying Levy took her entire book collection and threw them in the pool after she refused to lend him and his friends her camera for his trip. My wife helped get them out, but they were wet and some were torn. It was horrific because some of those books are hard to get and meant a lot to Susan as a part of her life. I was so mad at Levy. I came home to have a conversation with my wife to decide on a punishment, but he already packed a small bag and went to his dad's. I asked my wife how could she let him basically run after doing this, and she said he called his dad and he came to pick him up after Susan said that I was coming home to deal with the problem. I went to his dad's house and he refused to let me see him. I told him how Levy was hiding from consequences, and his dad tried to justify why Levy was acting out by blaming me for how me and Susan treat him. He even said he'd get CPS involved if I ever try to punish him because I'm not his dad. I have no right. Adding what Levy did was a reaction to my daughter being mean to him. He told me to leave because Levy won't come home till I promise not to do anything about what he did and put it in writing. I told him Levy should stay there with him then. He's not to come back till he get proper punishment. His dad argued it's his mom's house too and called my wife, and she asked to let this go and we'll figure out some way to resolve it, but I don't think it's fair for Susan to have her books ruined and Levy getting away with it. They're asking me to let it go, but this will only encourage Levy to do worse if I don't deal with it now. It's been 2 weeks and my in-laws say I was out of line for banning Levy from coming home and are telling me to step back, but I refused. Levy's dad thinks that because I'm not his bio dad, then I have no right to punish him for whatever he does in the house. In the past, his dad caused issues when I used to take Levy's electronics as punishment. Then I got talked out of punishing him every time he did something unacceptable, whether to me or his sisters. I've arranged for family therapy, but Levy's dad refused to let him go. I'd like to mention that my in-laws said that Levy is willing to apologize to Susan, and so this should be enough to get this over with, but I kept saying no, and for that I'm being considered at fault. Story 2. AITA telling the truth in the wedding toast. I'm a 30-year-old male and my best friend got married last week. I just bought a house and my wife is expecting our son in November. So I let him know I was limited in what I could contribute financially, but did tell him I would try my best. So I went to the bachelor party in Maine. I rented the tux and paid for mine and my wife's dinner at the rehearsal dinner. I also had a gift of $300 that I was going to give them, but we will get to why I didn't give it to them. He's texted me multiple times a day with updates. Fine. I didn't always respond, and it got to the point where if I didn't respond at least once a day, I'd get a call from my buddy. She texted me for the following reasons. My wife was not allowed to talk about our pregnancy at all. She didn't want anyone to focus on that more than her, the bride. She was not going to order special food for my wife. I was not helping the groom enough. He had to help her with favors, seating charts and programs. So I had to help him with those things. According to her, she also said to get ready to help with thank you notes after the wedding. She said if I was a true best man, I would offer to pay for the bar bill. I don't even know what that means. She had to approve my speech before the rehearsal dinner and wanted to be included as much as my buddy. She told me to make up things if I had to. I was also not allowed to include anyone but the two of them, and no inside jokes or stories about my buddy that didn't include her. Her last text said to tell my wife to keep it together and not make a pregnancy scene during the wedding. Also, she wanted her to choose a dress that downplayed her pregnancy as much as possible. I was just so aggravated. I spoke to my friend to see if he could reason with her. He told me to just play ball on this one. It's her day and to cut him a break, because he'd be dealing with her nonsense for the rest of his life. I was annoyed but calmed down. The day of, all the bride and my buddy do is scold me, berate me and bark orders. I head down to the bar for the drink. The bride's mother is there and warns me not to get drunk because I've ruined her daughter's day enough. Final straw. I didn't give them the card with the cash in the speech. I used my friend's exact wording about having to deal with her nonsense for the rest of his life. I wished them the best and told him I'd always be there for him, especially during the divorce. AITA. Story 3. AITA for favoring my scapegoat brother over his golden child twin sister. I has 2 younger siblings, Joe and Jill. They're twins, both 18 and graduating high school this year. Jill is my parents' favorite, because they've always wanted a daughter, while Joe is their scapegoat, because I guess he's the bonus baby they never actually asked for. I'm mostly better off than Joe, as I'm the oldest grandson from both sides of my family, almost all of whom are just as blatant as my parents are about their favoritism. I felt really bad for Joe, so I did what I could to make him feel less alone. Like when Jill got to go shopping with mommy and daddy, I took Joe skating with my friends. When our parents were too busy watching Jill's kitty pageant, I dragged my best bud to sit through Joe's elementary school musical. Small things like that. It all started as pity moves, but soon my friends pretty much liked Joe better than me, while Jill's princess syndrome got in her head. So now I spend more time with Joe because I simply like him better than Jill. Never said it out loud, but I don't make it a secret either that I prefer not to spend my time with entitled brats. Anyway, like I said, they're graduating soon. They both already had their choice of college, accommodations, etc. Jill's going to a uni in SF, fully funded by our parents. Unsurprisingly, Joe's going to the same uni as mine in Seattle, but different campus just 20-ish minutes away. He got a full ride, which apparently makes him ineligible to get any financial help from his own parents. This is also hardly surprising, so I made some calls to ask around, see if anyone is hiring next fall. I did this while on FaceTime with Joe. I was reassuring him that we'll find him a job that don't suck and pays enough, that he's better off without dad's money anyway because we both know it comes with strings attached, that this way, mom and dad wouldn't be able to stick their noses into his purchases. I got him to feel better about the whole thing and logged off. I guess Jill overheard, because the next day she sent me texts after texts demanding I help her find jobs as well because she doesn't want dad nagging her. When I told her, politely BTW, that I don't know anyone in SF, and that she'd get more help from mom and dad, she blew up, saying all these things about me favoring Joe over her. Which, yeah, it's true. I love both of my siblings, but I don't particularly like Jill. It's not like she's making herself likable, though. So AITA. Story 4. AITA for not asking my MIL nicely to hand over the baby for feeding. Hi, I'm a new mom. Had my son 5 weeks ago. My husband's parents have been staying with us and things have been super overwhelming. MIL has a habit of taking the baby and refusing to give him back to me. She'd say I'm deliberately ruining her time with him. My son needs feeding every 2 HRS, and she basically makes me beg her to hand him over to me so I could feed. Last night at 10 p.m., MIL had my son in her arms while sitting on the couch with my husband and his dad. I was exhausted. The baby started crying. I told my MIL to hand him over to me so I could feed him. She refused and I kept asking. My husband starts talking about what a whiny little girl I was to complain that our son is receiving love and cuddles and how I'm using feeding as an excuse to keep the baby away from his mom. I ignored him and told his mom to hand over the baby. She refused and said I needed to wait a little longer. I got angry at this point. My husband said I could take the baby after I asked his mom nicely. This had me seething. I meanly told his mom to stop being annoying and overbearing and hand him over to me. She looked at me shocked and hurt. She handed the baby over and ran into the guest room, and my husband gave me a look, then followed her and stayed inside to comfort her. He came into the room while I was feeding my son and started yelling about how disrespectful I was to speak to his mom this way and treat her poorly when all she's doing is showing our son more love than I do. I told him about how she's been taking the baby for hours and preventing me from feeding him properly. He said that 1, our son isn't an object for me to act like I own him, and 2, his mom was doing nothing wrong, and 3, I should have asked nicely instead of being a $CH to his mom and making her cry. I started crying and yelled that I'd go to my mom's place if his parents stay any longer, and he yelled back saying shut the fuck up. You're only acting up cause you don't want my parents around. Fuck's wrong with you? Then walked out. I felt terrible thinking maybe I was rude to his mom, but I also think that I'd hit my limits here. AITA for not asking her nicely like my husband wanted.